Public participation. Instructions for participation are included in the public meeting notices and may be found on the Gas Commission's website. I would like to acknowledge the presence of a quorum with the participation of Vice Chair Driscoll, Commissioner Urbania, and Commissioner McGraw. I would like to have the agenda read, marked, and entered into the record as Gas Commission Exhibit Number 1.
The Philadelphia Gas Commission will hold its regularly scheduled meeting on Tuesday, April 14th at 10 a.m. in the Commission's hearing room on the 18th floor, 1515 Arch Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, with a virtual option for those who cannot attend in person, for the purposes of considering: 1, the approval of the minutes of the meeting from March 10th, 2026. 2, the Philadelphia Gas Works proposed fiscal year 2027 capital budget, forecast for fiscal years 2028 to 2032 and related matters. 3, the executive director update. And 4, such other business as may properly be brought before this commission. A link to the virtual meeting room will be posted on the commission's website so as to allow all virtual attendees to observe. Christy Brady, Chair.
The first item on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from the Commission's March 10th, 2026 meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the March 10th meeting? Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Guys have it. Motion carries. The second item is PGW's proposed fiscal year 2027 capital budget and related matters. The recommended decision, which was issued by Executive Director Jamela McClendon and Commission staff on March 17th, will be marked as Gas Commission Exhibit Number 2. On March 23rd, PGW and the Public Advocate filed exceptions and comments to the recommended decision, which will be marked respectively as Gas Works Exhibit 1 and Public Advocate Exhibit 1. We would like to ask Ms. McClendon to provide a brief overview of PGW's proposed fiscal year 27 capital budget.
On January 2nd, 2026, PGW filed a proposed fiscal year 2027 capital budget of $390,561,000. After commission staff's customary due diligence, including the conduct of discovery and a public hearing, which was held on February 9th, 2026, staff issued a recommended decision on March 17th, 2026, wherein staff recommended that PGW's proposed FY 2027 capital budget be rejected and instead an FY 2027 capital budget in the amount of $208 million be approved. This amount represents a 47.6% reduction in PGW's proposed FY 2027 capital budget. Thank you.
Thank you. We would like to provide the participants with the opportunity to make a brief presentation before we call the question to vote. First, we will hear from PGW. Mr.
Good morning.
Desant?
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I just want to say we have a few challenges facing us with respect to the LNG project, which we will focus on today, and in our exceptions, that was the primary issue. Those challenges relate to getting the LNG liquefier in place by 2030 in a timely way. And the urgency of that is, without it, we not only risk exposing customers during the coldest winters to possible harm, but we also have a situation where we use the LNG liquefier to avert problems with system failure, other things that come up, not just the weather, that allow us to operate because we have the flexibility of peak shaving or addressing the need with the LNG liquefier. But let me first focus on those areas that we have an agreement with the recommended decision. On prudence, we fully agree that we've made a record as to the prudency of replacing the LNG liquefier. The existing liquefier is at the end of its useful life. We need to replace it in a timely way, and we think the record has been made that it needs to be replaced. Now, the only question is, having this agreement with the hearing officers on this point, what do we do about it? Prudence decision requires us to act because we need to have a plant in place in some reasonable timeline, and we're aiming for fiscal year 2030. We have about 4 concerns with respect to the recommended decision after these areas of agreement. For example, we need to get past the sizing of the plant. Talking now and the recommended decision flags some of the issues that the not only hearing officers, but the public advocate raised as to what's the appropriate size for the plant. We, based upon a PGW, based upon a design winter criteria, have decided that 3.2 BCF is the right production for the LNG plant. At present, our existing plant only produces 2.2 BCF. This is a problem. It's a shortfall of approximately 1 BCF every year. We avert that problem or address it, by sizing the new plant in a way that we don't have to truck in the difference between 2.2 and 3.2 BCF based upon design winter criteria. This is the right size for the plant. It doesn't produce excess capacity. It produces enough capacity. If you truck in the LNG, you're basically dealing with the issue on an ad hoc basis. And we're suggesting that you deal with it as a plan and not trucking also the LNG through the community around the LNG plant. In addition to that, we suggest that we need to proceed to advance engineering studies. Those studies basically will tell us all the detail that the public advocate and the hearing officers would like to see can be provided with advanced engineering studies. Apologize for my voice. They're called FEED studies. They're engineering studies, it's front-end engineering design studies. It gives you the precise design of the plant, the sizing, it gives you piping, electrical configuration, and it'll give you a better idea as to project costs because they've vetted the project much more carefully. We're at the primary stages of the project at this point. The hearing examiner's error, we believe, in not approving the LNG project, at least on a conditional basis. On a conditional basis, one of the conditions would be provide the results of the FEED study. That gives you the design information. It gives you better cost information. It gives you all the criteria you're looking for and gives you the agility, once you have it, to make a decision relatively promptly to release the funding that's available for the plant. Project approval, at least on a conditional basis, is important for that reason. A second issue. The project should not be delayed because of the P3 negotiations. Those negotiations are for an independent project. We are looking for alternatives and trying to be creative about doing it. And as a consequence, we have identified in a transparent way, we're trying to do everything we can to spare customers the burden of this if we can, or lessen the burden of it. Do that by pursuing other alternatives as well. But the 20 criteria or deadline for the completion of the plant doesn't go away. So we believe the conditional funding also gives you flexibility there. If we know what happens with the P3 negotiations, giving that information to you, you can make in a very prompt manner a decision about what to do next. So basically based upon design, based upon P3, you have this ability to sort of pivot with the information you need. And I think it gives you as a regulator enough data to make an informed decision. And you see, you could go about it different ways, and the hearing officers have suggested that. We think it's more agile and more prompt to address it in a conditional funding authorization. So just to put a line under it, conditional approval, we think is the best way forward. Obviously, full approval will be if we had our druthers, that's what we would want. But conditional approval, I think, gives you the ability to have the information you need to make an informed decision to go forward. With P3 and advanced engineering outcomes, and we can sort of make the right decision and hopefully be in a situation where we can, similar to last winter, be able to serve our customers in a cold snap and have that peak shaving ability and save customers money. And we don't emphasize enough that over the years, 30 or some years or more, we saved $3 billion easily with respect to the operation of an LNG facility. Other utilities are sort of envious of us because we have this capacity. We don't have to go and access the markets and buy at the worst times, at the worst prices. We have the ability to produce our own peak shaving load, save customers, keep customers warm in the winter, And in addition to that, have the ability to avert system failures or address system failures as to remedies that might happen. We also make comments about public outreach and the small and local business in our exceptions, but I think they speak for themselves. And we just wanted to indicate to you that it's important to make a timely decision here. And if prudence is something we all agree on, and we should, that decision in terms of prudent and reliable service should trump everything else, or at least be counterbalanced with everything else. So you have all the information you need to make a correct decision and a timely decision in a way so that customers can either save money or even better, avert curtailment of service, all the problems that come with that. We take for granted that this plan is in place. Take for granted for 30 years that we've had a system that operates economically on a least cost basis. And now we're sort of acting as if there's something to be gained by delaying a decision to build a plant that makes sense from operational purposes. And Mr. Cassidy, the operating engineer, he knows these things inside and out. He, I think, made it as credible a record as he can with respect to the plant in terms of prudence. And if you look at the study we provided as well, it leaves a foundation, I think, that makes the prima facie case that we should proceed. The hearing officers agreed with that. We just need to take the next step and get funding in place. And that's all we ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ballinger, are there any statements on behalf of the advocate?
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Robert Ballinger. I'm serving as public advocate in this capital budget proceeding. As you know from the record up to this point, we reached agreement with PGW on a number of adjustments to the budget. Those are no longer in dispute, and what remains is one very, very large adjustment. PGW's proposed $182 million Richmond LNG replacement project. And the hearing examiners, recommend you deny PGW spending authority based on three primary factors. First, they agree with the public advocate that PGW's proposal, which is capable of producing 1.1 BCF more LNG annually than its existing plant, is oversized and could overburden PGW customers with unnecessary debt service expense. And what you just heard from Mr. Desant fails to acknowledge one important part of the record before you, which is that PGW has historically engaged in off-system sales of LNG because it has had excess capacity. The PGW's plant that it has had in service for over 20 years now has been adequate to meet PGW's needs, and we don't believe PGW's made the case for expanding the plant. Second, the hearing examiners recognize that PGW's plant design is incomplete and detailed project design has not commenced. And the issue there isn't getting the information now, it's getting the information later when PGW has to come back and ask for more funding from you and more delays and more time spent because it hasn't done its homework. Finally, your hearing examiners recognize that PGW's parallel efforts to partner with a private entity to finance construction of this plant militates heavily against authorizing expenditure at this time. Providing spending approval, if negotiations are successful, would be totally unnecessary and create a massive infusion into the budget that PGW doesn't even need. So the public advocate concurs with the hearing examiner's recommendation. We did not accept or urge you to take action different than what the hearing examiners have recommended, but we do have a few concerns that I think were not either adequately addressed in the recommended decision or with which we think the record requires some supplementation. As a policy matter, Philadelphia has adopted the goal of attaining carbon neutrality by 2050. How PGW budgets align with this goal is a consideration that I think needs significant and ongoing attention. For the limited purpose of this proceeding, however, I note that PGW has not shown that its new plant is consistent with those sustainability objectives. And the recommended decision before you doesn't make a finding on that issue. And so I want that to be clear today. Regarding the useful life of PGW's plant, as we've put and explained on the record, PGW's statements on its useful life have changed several times. It's been a moving target in proceedings before you. And peak shaving plants, those plants that produce LNG to meet winter demand when gas prices are higher due to market pressure, can and do remain in service for 50 years or more. PGW's plant has been in service for 21 years at this point, and it has received manufacturer guidance and operational guidelines to change how it uses the plant in order to extend its useful life. So we maintain our skepticism regarding those claims, and at least with regard to the recommended decision's conclusion that that has been resolved, we don't believe that's correct. We believe we will continue to consider whether or not the plant is due for replacement when PGW comes back in a future proceeding. PGW's claims regarding the savings to its customers also warrant some response today. Peak shaving facilities have historically been cost beneficial, and PGW's facility has been cost beneficial to customers in terms of gas costs, but PGW did not save $90 million this winter due to its LNG facility. PGW's claim is that in the absence of LNG, it would have had to pay $90 million to supplement its existing supplies to meet customer demand during the January and February cold snap. That's not true because PGW had already purchased the gas. So whatever the cost was to purchase that gas is not factored in. PGW had already liquefied the gas. The operational expense of liquefying the gas is not factored in. So some of the numbers that have been put in front of you in this proceeding and some of the estimates that PGW has used to make its case are really overstated. And in some ways they're scare tactics. And so I recommend you disregard those numbers for purposes of discussion today. And finally, I just wanted to add, not substantively as to the proposal, but that I have heard from multiple members of the public in advance of this meeting with questions about the Commission's online form for public input. I was kind of at a loss to explain what was happening there and why the rules for virtual participation changed today. I request that any input that has been provided electronically using that form be appended to the transcript so that it is on the same record as those people who've come to submit comments today. And I would also welcome the opportunity to work with staff and commissioners going forward on ideas about changing public input, because I think that it's very important that members of the public have as many opportunities as we can make available to them to participate. And I know that online participation can be a way to do that, as can a written form. So I would like to be involved in discussions on that if there are ideas to change things going forward. And that, to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ballinger. Next, we will take brief comments from members of the public. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes and should only address PGW's proposed fiscal year 27 capital budget.
First, we have Emily Davis. When you approach the microphone, please introduce yourself, any organization, if any, that you are here representing. After you have done that, I will start your time.
My name is Emily Davis, and I'm just representing myself today. I live in Center City. I've lived in Philadelphia for 40 years, but I'm concerned about—
Ms. Davis, as a reminder to everyone, again, the request is that you just introduce yourself. Once you're done introducing yourself, I will start your time to begin. So you may begin speaking now.
I'm concerned about the future of PGW and our planet. I ask that the commissioner follow the recommendation of the hearing examiner and remove the $182 million LNG replacement line from the budget. Since our city has resolved to be carbon neutral by 2050, only 24 years from now, this will become a stranded asset. As the city moves toward carbon neutrality, PGW must have a plan for its employees who will still need jobs, just as Philadelphians will still need heating and cooling. Being able to sell geothermal heating and cooling is an option listed in the business diversification study, it will provide PGW with year-round income and its employees with many jobs for which they already have skills. As a member of Geodelphia, I'm familiar with other cities and utility companies that have been implementing geothermal networks. And the first geothermal energy network was implemented in France in 1332. So it's not a new idea. As for geothermal heating and cooling, the first commercial use was in 1948 in Portland, also not particularly new. In Framingham, Massachusetts, Eversource Energy began planning for its geothermal pilot in 2020. Now, in 2026, pilot participants, which include over 100 residential apartments and homes, are enjoying the second season of geothermal heating and cooling. Here in Philadelphia, 4 years after funding for a study was put into PGW's budget, PGW is finally nearing completion of their study, and their study investigated the smallest possible network of 2 buildings, neither of which are residential. It's time to give Philadelphians an opportunity to experience thermal energy networks provided by the utility that they own. Again, I ask that to remove the 182 million LNG line from the budget and to make sure that PGW's budget aligns with the city climate goals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Sarah Bayer. And again, as a reminder, introduce yourself, any organization, if any, that you're affiliated with. And then once you're done with that, I will start your time.
Hi, thank you. My name is Sarah Bayer, and I am here as a resident of Port Richmond.
Okay, thank you. You may begin now.
Good morning. As I said, my name is Sarah Bayer. Thank you for letting me be here today to listen and speak. As a resident of Port Richmond, at the last public meeting, I offered public comment on my concerns around environmental exposures and a continued investment in fossil fuels that directly conflicts with Philadelphia's 2050 carbon neutral commitment. Given the declining demand for LNG for residential use, moving forward with an investment of this scale at the Richmond facility without fully considering viable alternatives raises concerns about potential cost burdens for ratepayers. Today, I would like to also address the lack of transparency.
I am so sorry to everyone. There is a fire drill for the building. It's disturbing. I don't want to take from your time while I'm speaking. It's just a fire drill. It was announced. We apologize, but please proceed. You can resume.
Okay, do you want me to keep talking over this?
If you could, it's going to be a
Okay.
few minutes.
All right, so I would like to address the lack of transparency and opportunity for public engagement from PGW and the Philadelphia Gas
Can you
Commission.
pause? This will stop in a moment, Iglesias.
Last time I was here, I spoke about environmental concerns, industrial impact in the neighborhood of Port Richmond. Today, I'm speaking about the lack of transparency and opportunity for public engagement from PGW and the Philadelphia Gas Commission. From my perspective as a communications professional, I don't believe that due diligence has been done to engage the public, especially the residents of Port Richmond for whom this will, impact. I will remind you that Port Richmond is a proud working class neighborhood that's long carried more than its fair share of industrial burden, and investing further in LNG infrastructure here raises serious concerns about our safety, air quality, emergency preparedness, and environmental justice. Approving this budget line is an important step in the process. It's essentially a foot in the door for PGW. Before moving forward, it is critical that PGW clearly demonstrates the need for LNG plant replacement and meaningfully engages the Port Richmond community. We share the public advocate's concern that neither has been sufficiently addressed to date. And I would also like to say that the change to virtual participation is concerning. I can speak that, I have a fairly flexible boss and job. Not everyone in my neighborhood has the privilege that
30
I do to take a day off. So for many people on a Tuesday morning, the only way that we can participate is through this virtual option. And I really do feel that the people who are online today should be allowed to share comments in addition to preparing statements ahead of time. And if in the future, if you would like to solicit comments online like that, maybe like think about digital barriers. Having someone fill out a PDF, sign it, and then email it is a barrier.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Next, we have Eric Stowers. Again, introduce yourself, any organization, if any. Once you've done that, I will let you know when you can begin.
My name is Eric Stowers. I'm not with an official organization. I'm a resident of Port Richmond.
Okay, you may begin now.
Thank you, Gas Commission. Kind of at a loss for what to talk about because there's like so many underlying details that I want to comment on. And really like beyond comments, I would love to be able to ask questions directly and not just have to state stuff for your consideration, but to actually get answers on that kind of stuff. I'm going to talk about a few main points today. First, I'll just comment on what I heard just from right now. There's a lot of talk about the importance that we need to get this going right now. We need to act timely. There's a lot of risk-averse sentiment right here, and that makes sense. Like, if we're talking about a plant that is like what we're considering, like the nature of how this serves the community, that makes sense. But this is a long-term decision. Like, it's going to have major impacts down the road. So when we talk about the timeliness, I just keep on thinking about the irony that we care so much about the timeliness of this plant, but we don't care about the timeliness of how we're addressing climate change. If PGW really cared about the timeliness of stuff, wouldn't we be addressing our carbon neutral goals already with what they've been doing, with what they've had years to do? So when I hear about all this stuff, it really just seems like it's a sales tactic to hurry and rush the sale on this kind of stuff. Let's get conditional approval so that way we can already just start moving. It's harder to stop stuff when you've already just kind of set everything in motion right there. So that really bothered me about today because there's a lot of important conditions. Like, what are the conditions going to be? I'm going to call out a few that I've been really thinking about over the last couple of months, and I've read the capital budget 3 different times looking for these answers and tried to engage with others, and it's still unclear to me. The public-private partnership, to me, is something big that should be addressed before. There's like, would we ever sign up for a mortgage but without knowing the rate? Would we ever sign on a real estate agent before I know knowing what their commission will be? Like, I don't even know the full details of what the private partner what that would look like, but those should be resolved beforehand. We should know what that's going to be, and if that's going to be something that gets figured out later on, then great. Let's do that and then get approval for the budget once you already have all those line items in there. We talked about the lawyer today talked about the plant has already been like some things have been figured out and some things haven't been, but like there's been no facility-wide NOx limit on the existing plant. Thank you. There's been no facility-wide NOx limit on this plant ever. Is that going to be addressed? That could change how the infrastructure needs to be done. Port Richmond is already an industrialized area. This is stuff that needs to be taken into consideration. There should be proper ways to engage the community. Please read all the underlying details that are going into here. There's going to be a lot of excess LNG. Who's going to profit from that? How does that affect the community? Please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Eric.
Next, we have Karen Harvey.
My name is Karen Harvey. I'm here as a resident of Philadelphia.
Okay. You may begin now.
I am a member of Here for Climate Justice and the founding director of the Philadelphia Rent Control Coalition. But today I'm here speaking as an individual, a mother, a grandmother, and a lifelong PGW consumer. I'm here because I need to know what the commission and the city of Philadelphia plan to do to improve the quality of the air, which is becoming increasingly difficult for me to catch my breath in. I've heard numerous promises for a clean, green Philadelphia by 2050. At 73 years of age, I figure the chances are pretty good that you've little concern about keeping that promise to me personally. But what about my grandchildren, the families of the people in this room, and your own kids? My sense is that sadly, the members of the commission and the legislatures of the city possess even less knowledge about geothermal practices and policies than do I and the general public, which is frightening because you literally hold the futures of our children in the palms of your hands. How and when do you intend to educate yourselves toward cleaning the air I will need to breathe for however many years I have left on this earth? Again, what about the children we kiss goodnight? We, the public, look to you for answers and for protection and for a safe and healthy environment in which to live. The time is now, the people are here, and we want to work with you to secure all of our futures. Think of yourselves as instruments of life, if you will, and make the decision to do what is right for those you have been commissioned to serve and protect. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share my thoughts and concerns.
Thank you. Next, we have Paul Devine. I don't know if it's Baton or Baton. My apologies.
It's Paul Devine Batone, and I'm a pediatrician just here speaking on my own behalf.
Okay, you may begin now.
Thanks everyone for being here. As I said, I'm a pediatrician. I'm also a dad. I'm also a PGW customer. I live in Philadelphia. And I just want to echo a lot of points that folks have made about concerns about transparency, about the way that this is being rushed pretty obviously to make sure that this can get locked in a time in which we still feel the natural gas is a good, viable option. I do want to talk a little bit about the health concerns that I have as a pediatrician. So we know that Philadelphia has more than its burden of pediatric asthma specifically. Rates of pediatric asthma are somewhere in the 20 to 25% range. We look at a national average about 6%. So we're talking about more than 3 times, almost 4 times the national average for asthma. We also know that all the compounds that are associated with the production of natural gas, with the burning of natural gas, that affect us in our communities and in our homes, increase levels of pediatric asthma. My husband and I are both doctors. We are rich. We are actively looking to replace the gas range that's in our home because we have a 2-year-old and we're planning to adopt another child very soon. And we have this option to, even without the subsidies that were available, have been taken away by the rollback of all the climate progress we've been making at the federal level, replace our system. And we are going to do that because we care so much about the health of our child and want to protect him as much as we can. We recognize that not everybody has the option to do that. In medicine, we think a lot about environmental determinants of health. So that means the way that our environment affects our health every day. We know that certain communities are much more affected than others by very poor environmental determinants of health. One of the most important is proximity to heavy industry. They have a term they call sacrifice zones. These are the neighborhoods like Port Richmond, like Greats Ferry, where the Philadelphia Energy Solutions was. These are neighborhoods where time and time again, we're told we need new plants, let's put it right there. We're talking about how trucks might have to come through this neighborhood. Sounds like to me, we need to think about a different solution. We think about better energy efficiency, better geothermal, all these things that are under PGW's umbrella, but are not being explored, as opposed to, oh, well, you got 2 options. We can either have trucks or we can have a huge plant. Those do not seem like good solutions. Those do not seem like
30
just
seconds.
solutions. Thank you. So I just want to say that we need to be thinking globally, where we know that natural gas affects not just our lifetime, our adults with respiratory issues, our children with asthma, much higher rates of premature birth, low birth rate with higher air pollution. This is a lifetime issue from before birth until death. And we need to be thinking about every opportunity to transition away from natural gas and other very polluting industries towards something that will be much cleaner and much more sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, we have Mitch Channon.
I'm Mitch Channon, resident of Northeast Philly, PGW ratepayer. I'm not representing any organization today.
Okay, you may begin now.
Great. So thanks for the opportunity to speak. I want to begin by commenting on the change to the public comment procedures. If there are people waiting online to speak today, I hope that you will allow them to speak. Many people like to tailor their comments based on what they've heard in the moment, and I've heard no justification for why people have to show up in person in order to be able to do that. So like many people have stated, I support the hearing examiner's recommendation and hope the commission will decline to approve the $182 million for the LNG project. There is an emergency happening in this building and in Philly, and it is not a drill. So the emergency is that we have an asthma crisis, we have an energy affordability crisis, we have a climate crisis. We need long-term real solutions for those problems, and we're not getting them from PGW, from City Council, or from the Gas Commission. 7 years ago, many of us were fighting a proposal to build an LNG plant in South Philadelphia. We came here to the Gas Commission, we came to City Council. At the time, many people stated and agreed that we have real problem to solve. How do we make sure that people can afford the heat that they need, that the heat is reliable and safe, and that we protect clean air and a livable climate and union jobs at the same time, and that we needed a real long-term plan for PGW in order to accomplish that. That was 7 years ago. I testified at a hearing at City Hall about that in 2019. Since then, there's been no plan developed. Instead, PGW is putting forward, and the Gas Commission is approving, long-term capital investments in fossil fuel infrastructure year after year with no long-term forecast and no long-term plan. So why are we approving massive fossil fuel infrastructure projects designed to last 20, 30, 50 years or longer with no long-term plan when we know that to meet the city's climate goals, we need to phase out the use of fossil fuels? And when we know fossil fuel consumption is declining even now without the policies that we need in place. I understand that people have a concern about making sure that people can have their heat in the winter starting in 2030. There have been years to develop a long-term plan. There have been years to figure out how to solve that issue with winter. You know, how do we make sure that winter
30
peak,
seconds.
that we can provide reliable, safe heat in the winter during peak times in an affordable way. And the work has not been done to answer the question in the way that it needs to be answered. I hope the commission will not only decline to approve the $180 million now, but insist that PGW produce long-term forecast and business plans that reflect the economic and technological realities and the city's climate goals. Someone needs to hold PGW accountable to do
Mr.
that.
Channon, that's your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch. We will now move to Executive Director McClendon for emailed public comments. Ms. McClendon, were all public comments that were received before 9 a.m. this morning furnished to the commissioners for review?
Yes, they were.
Thank you. Have all commissioners had an opportunity to review the public comments that were received by 9 a.m. this morning? We have. Thank you. Please mark the email public comments as Gas Commission Exhibit number 3. Are there any comments or questions from any of the commissioners at this point? Thank you all for your participation. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. You have a comment?
Yeah.
Sure.
So I had a couple questions and comments. And so I think, you know, I want to acknowledge the, you know, start with appreciation around the last 2 winters and the work that PGW staff have done to ensure that these, you know, that heating systems around Philadelphia were able to not experience gas service interruptions that we've seen in surrounding counties. This is because of the LNG reserves. So definitely appreciate having this from a resilience standpoint, specifically this past winter, having that cold snap. But I think, you know, overall, there are questions around the calculations of the savings. I'd just be curious, official breakdown of what went into the 90 million figure. Are we looking at the liquefaction, as mentioned, storage, vaporization, all of that goes into that, and specifically around this January event. And then curious around, what that would look like to, again, the trucking in of things. I think that in that too, right, are there emissions calculations that have gone into that, right? Like what would it look like to have had trucks drive in and things of that nature? So these are the kind of things that I would be curious to see going forward for that particular piece. I don't know if you want to jump in now or.
Well, we certainly could provide an answer for your question, and based upon the transcript, I'll share that with Mr. Cassidy.
And then I think, we've heard a lot about sustainability and climate alignment. And I just wanted to address, in this, as we're moving forward, what are the considerations around, PGW looking to align with the city's climate commitments? How is that going into things like the liquefier? Are we looking, you had mentioned engineering studies, but is that including like a life cycle analysis from a carbon perspective, right? Like what goes into this? Because I want to make sure that's addressed. I think that's an important piece of the puzzle as we're figuring this out to ensure that we are making the most, strategic investments. I know that PGW has engaged with environmental resources management, as has been mentioned. I think that, that low carbon pathway study, I don't know the timing of that particularly, but I would be curious if that is going to be able to, or at least have portions of that to be able to impact the study here, and what all that, all that entails. Are we looking at the management of the system and current? Are we looking at like new building on the diversification study? That's my question on that one.
And we can supply an answer to that as well.
Great.
And we're just trying to figure out how this all sort of fits into conditions that you might ask after we answer the question, for us to follow through on in order to get approval.
Appreciate that. And then I think for the negotiations in here, as we're looking, I'd mentioned the ability to have that low carbon pathway, potential in there. But I think that would be, if we're talking about the ability to come forward with post P3, right? Like that P3 assessment should be done additionally with that. So like, I think like if it's capital only, what does that look like? But then if the P3, like as that contract negotiation, I know that it'll take some time, but I think that having that consideration in there is really key as well. I think, and then on the geothermal feasibility, I know that feasibility study was done, if I'm not mistaken, with operating dollars, right? And because we were not directly, so I just wanted to get that on the record, like that is not a capital obligation, right? That was an operating expense that we were looking at the potential to what it could look like. But I think I'm just surprised to not see some kind of capital like line item that would address a potential pilot for that going forward. And so like I think I would hope that there would be something like that going forward to address whether it's the low carbon pathway line or something like that. I don't know if it's like it's buried within the capital budget, or if there is like an ability to pull that out. But I think that would be something that I'm hearing that we want to see going forward.
And it is funded, and we are committed to doing it. But we can also give you an acknowledgement of that fact so that there's absolutely full transparency on that issue.
Beyond, so you're saying there is funding allocated to do the pilot post feasibility. So I think
the post feasibility will be the next step.
I see. So, but my understanding is the feasibility study is wrapping up now. So then there's no capital assignment at this point to the potential of a pilot, because we're asking for the liquefier before we have all the details. But like, I'm just curious about the geothermal like piece in that.
And we certainly can answer that question for you. But I think Mr. Tomei we'll address it, Florian Tomei, in terms of where we are with the project. And based upon that assessment, that'll tell you our next step, which will be to ask you for whatever funding is needed.
Perfect. And I would just ask that that when the study is completed, that we come back to a public meeting and present the findings of the study as well. Cool.
Sure.
That's mine.
When will that study be done? Do we
I
have a
know,
date?
Mr. Tomei, Florian Tomei is supposed to be there for the next meeting.
Okay.
To report
Yes.
for us. And we were going to do that at the end of the next commission meeting.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions from any of the commissioners at this point? Thank you all for your participation as we deliberate. All identified exhibits will be entered into the record of this meeting. This matter is now before this commission for action. Is there a motion on the Philadelphia Gas Commission's recommended decision for the fiscal year 27 capital budget, associated forecasts, and other matters?
Madam Chair, I have a motion, but I'd just like to comment before I make my motion. While we appreciate the work put forth by the Gas Commission staff, public advocate, and others involved with making this recommended decision, we currently lack a clear recommendation that would allow us to make an informed decision at this time. Primarily, our concern involves the recommendation involving the replacement of the LNG liquefier Richmond plant. First, the recommendation states that the Richmond liquefier is in the latter portion of its service life and that continued reliance upon it presents reliability risks. However, the Gas Commission staff recommendation is asking for us to deny PGW's request for $182 million for the liquefier replacement, even though its time in service is soon coming to an end. Furthermore, the staff recommendation states that the replacement of the LNG liquefier is prudent for safe and reliable service, and if PGW needs money in the future, it can request an amendment to the capital budget. We have contradictory statements with what we're being asked to review and approve regarding the replacement of the LNG liquefier. A decision of this magnitude requires clear guidance for the Commission to make an informed decision. This decision will affect all Philadelphia gas utility ratepayers. We need all the facts before moving forward. This is a complex issue deserving more study. And as such, I make a motion that we table this matter to allow sufficient time to obtain the necessary information and clear guidance for our decision.
The Vice Chair has made a motion to table a decision on the Gas Commission's recommendation for the fiscal year 2027 capital budget. Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Opposition, the motion has been approved, and we will table this matter to allow sufficient time to obtain the necessary information and clear guidance for our decision. The third item,
Madam Chair,
yes,
if I might, most of the budget is non-controversial. In other words, the 182 million, I understand the LNG project, but when you subtract that from the balance of the budget where we have stipulations and agreements and normal sort of vanilla expenditures that we make that need to be recommended first and then approved by City Council in a timely way before they go out of session at the end of the fiscal year, it would be prudent to have a decision on that portion of the budget other than the LNG project today or in the near future.
we will consider that, but it will not happen today. If we have a special session, we could consider that, but we do have time before council needs to pass the budget. Thank you, Mr. Toussaint. The third item on the agenda is the Executive Director report. Ms. McClendon.
Thank you, Commissioner Brady. Since the last commission meeting, commission staff has worked on the following matters. It issued its recommended decision in PGW's FY 2027 capital budget on March 17th, 2026. Commission staff attended and spoke at the Be Utility Wise Conference on March 24th, 2026. Attended the Women's Energy Network Conference and began working on the redesign of the Commission's website, including the establishment of a YouTube channel. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is such other business as may be properly brought before this commission. Is there any other business to be brought before this commission? There being no further business, I direct the Gas Commission staff and assigned counsel from the Law Department to prepare the necessary orders and resolutions resulting from today's meeting. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.